You know, the novel, it feels like it's been with us forever, right? But have you ever stopped to think about where this unique form of storytelling actually came from? And what are the essential ingredients that make it so powerful? Well, in this explainer, we're going to unpack the incredible story of the novel.
All right, here's our roadmap. We'll start with why the novel was such a revolutionary new kind of story, then trace its epic journey through time. After that, we'll dive right into its DNA, explore the whole universe of genres, and finally, take a look at its enduring legacy.
Okay, let's kick things off with Section 1, a new form of story. Because believe me, when the novel arrived on the scene, it wasn't just another way to tell a tale. It was a full-blown revolution in literature.
But that brings up a pretty fundamental question, doesn't it? What is a novel, really? And where did it even come from? Getting the answer is the key to understanding its incredible power.
At its core, a novel is a long, fictional story that gets right into the messy, intimate details of human experience. And the origin of the word itself tells you so much. It comes from the Italian word novella, which literally means new. This wasn't just a new story, it was a completely new way of seeing the world. The 18th century was basically the perfect storm for the novel to take off. Thanks to the Industrial Revolution, you suddenly had this brand new literate middle class with some extra time and money. Now, these folks weren't aristocrats, so the old epics about kings and gods, they just didn't hit home. They wanted stories that reflected their own complex lives, their struggles, and their dreams. And the novel, with its focus on realism, gave them exactly that.
And that brings us to our next section, the novel's epic journey. And it truly is epic. We're talking about a story that stretches back almost 2,000 years. It's wild. So while the modern novel absolutely exploded in the 18th century, its roots go way, way back to ancient Greek romances. But get this, the book that's widely considered the world's first novel was actually written way back in 1010 by a woman in Japan named Murasaki Shikibu. It's called The Tale of Genji. It wasn't until 1605 that Cervantes' Don Quixote really kicked off the European tradition, setting the stage for that 18th century boom.
And wow, what an explosion it was. This is when literary giants walked the earth. We're talking about authors like Daniel Defoe, Jane Austen, and Charles Dickens. They took this new form and made it the most dominant and influential type of literature out there, capturing the political, social, and psychological spirit of their age. This quote really gets to the heart of why the novel was such a massive success. Unlike the big, grand gestures of drama or the often dense language of poetry, the novel gave people a direct, detailed picture of their society. It gave everyday readers a way to make sense of their own, often confusing lives.
Okay, so we know where the novel came from, but how does it actually work? Let's pop the hood and look inside the novel's DNA to see the 6 essential building blocks that make every single story run. Every novel, I don't care if it's a detective story or a sci-fi epic, is built from these 6 core elements. They all have to work together, of course, but for now, let's just zoom in on 2 of the most fundamental ones, plot and character. Let's start with plot. Put simply, the plot is the sequence of events. It's the what happens next that keeps you hooked. It's really the engine of the story, that chain of cause and effect that pulls you, the reader, from the first page all the way to the last. Of course, the plot has to happen to someone, and that's where character comes in. These are the individuals who live through the story's events. An author can just sketch them out briefly, or they can dive really, really deep, creating a psychological portrait so vivid that the character feels like a real person. And at the heart of most novels, you're going to find these 2. You have the protagonist, that's your main character, the one we follow. And then you have the antagonist. That's the character, or sometimes it's a whole force like society or nature, that stands in their way, and that's what creates the central conflict of the story.
Now, once you have those building blocks, you can build just about anything. And this brings us to our next section, a universe of genres. The novel is an incredibly flexible form, and over the years, it has evolved into a stunning variety of styles. First, let's look at the novel's little sibling, the novella. As the name suggests, it just means little new thing in Italian. It's a shorter, more focused work. It doesn't have the huge, sprawling scope of a full novel. Instead, it typically zooms in on a single powerful event or idea. And don't let the size fool you. Some of the most powerful stories ever written are novellas. Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness and Herman Melville's Billy Budd are absolutely perfect examples. They prove you don't need 500 pages to explore deep themes of morality and human nature and leave a lasting impact on a reader. But beyond just length, the novel has branched out into countless genres. I mean, we've got realistic novels that mirror everyday life, historical novels set in the past, science fiction exploring the future, detective fiction for solving a crime. The list just goes on, and each genre uses those core elements in a totally unique way. Take the Gothic novel, for instance. Its recipe is pretty clear. You mix in some terror, mystery, horror, maybe a touch of the supernatural. Then you set it all in a spooky, decaying castle or a haunted house, and you have a genre that has been thrilling readers for centuries. These genre conventions, they're basically a toolbox for authors to work with.
So all of this history, all of this variety, it brings us to our final section, the novel's enduring legacy. In an age of infinite distraction, why do these paper and ink creations still hold so much power over us? The answer is actually pretty simple, but also profound. The novel is more than just entertainment. It's both a mirror and a window. It allows us to walk in someone else's shoes, to understand a totally different point of view, and to see our own world and ourselves with much greater clarity. It's basically a tool for empathy. So as we wrap this up, here's something to think about. In a world that is completely dominated by bite-sized content, streaming shows, and endless social media feeds, what does the future hold for this amazing long-form art? What is the next chapter in the epic story of the novel?